Managing change, that's a really good question. The way that I manage change is to really stay focused on my goal and to try to be as present as possible. Like right now I'm trying to do a career change, and the way that I work with that is to, not to stress about it too much, not to worry about always doing something about it every day, but to keep my goal clearly in mind and work toward that. And when I start to get away from that, I try not to get too far off topic, but just keep that goal in mind and keep going toward it.
Welcome back. Well, speaking of going toward that goal, we'll continue our discussion with Managing Change, and I'm wondering if you had any comments about our
Do I
speaker.
have a comment?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I do. Sometimes that's a great strategy and a lot of people use that, and I think it's important when dealing with change to ask yourself, how have I helped myself in the past? Every single time I've asked that question, people come up with answers. A lot of what happens when we go through change is we forget that we do know how to take care of ourselves. Hey, we got to this day, this moment, all right? And this person has found holding on to goals is helpful. However, sometimes the goals get shattered. Maybe you lost your ability to use your legs, like Christopher Reeve or something like that. Then what? Okay, then there has to be some shifting and remembering that it's okay. This is a good place to be. It's okay to not know what to do.
Okay. I think you've touched on an important point, which is I know there are certainly times in my life where if I'm facing a change, I forget to generalize my coping skills. It's sort of like in my anxiety, everything gets sort of wiped. And that sense of I don't know what to do has to do with feeling like I'm facing this for the first time. And it's wonderful to have sort of a gentle reminder that, well, as a matter of fact, you've coped with these things quite well. How did you do that? And remembering our strengths instead of immediately focusing in on what we might think of as our confusion or weaknesses.
And to add to what you're saying, it's an automatic reflex. Most of us will respond with amnesia in the change and expect that. Just count on it. Okay. And then that does pass. The human body cannot tolerate intense pain for long. But the intense pain passes, and then we can start to remember. And if you can't remember, call a friend. I'm forgetting something here.
That's
Can
right.
you help me out?
Yeah, have you ever seen me do this before?
Yeah.
In fact, let's take a look at our graphic again and look at the next two stages, which go up the continuum. Let's see. After exhaustion, like you said, the human body can only be in pain for so long. We turn to exploration, where we are seeing possibilities, clarifying goals, exploring alternatives. We may have some indecisiveness, which you point out is normal, perhaps learning new skills, maybe even discovering some creativity. Mm-hmm. Then we make a commitment at some point to move ahead and focus on our direction. We may need teamwork and cooperation from the people around us. So in terms of exploration, I know that what's that quote that necessity is the mother of invention.
Or crisis moves the Congress.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'd like to say that most people stick with resistance. Most people, have you ever heard of the flying Wallenzas?
Yeah.
And this family of trapeze artists fell to their death, except for the father. Several years later, he made a comeback, and he was on a tightrope holding that long pole they will hold, and a freak gust of wind pushed him off, and there was a moment in time where if he had only let go of the pole, he could grab onto the rope. Well, he held onto the pole. Why? Because for a lifetime, it was a familiar pattern of security. And most people want to hold on to those patterns that have worked in their past, and they're terrified to let go. It feels like falling into the hole and not having any way to come back. So it's important to remember that it's okay to let go, and that it's going to feel scary, and you don't have to do it alone. I'm just planting some seed attitudes to help in that, because that's a transition place, going from resistance to exploration.
So it takes a certain amount of courage
Tremendous.
as you're saying, too, or faith. I know in recovery we talk about that there's usually a light at the end of the tunnel, but in between can be really dark. And that trusting the hallway or trusting that in-between time. And in here it mentions the indecisiveness, which I know can also feel like maybe that transition period where we're not as clear.
And this is where it helps to talk with people like you and me, because we can walk with you and remind you, hey, here's some thoughts to hold on to. Here's a new set of skills, or here's the tightrope to hold on to instead of the pole. Such as it's okay to feel small, it's normal, that's part of being human. And you're in a growing place. Instead of feeling like it's pain, well, it's growing pains. Now, and all these attitudes give people that sense of hope right in the moment, so you can take the next step towards getting, learning new skills and so forth.
Okay. And it's, part of it too, I imagine, is developing a picture of who we're going to be after this change. I mean, part of the frightening thing is, okay, this part is maybe ended, but I don't have a picture of this side of it. So when I look ahead, I know, for example, all right, maybe I can't have this job, but I can picture me doing a different career. So, part of that, I think, is the opportunity to develop, and that's the creativity, I think, another picture of how we can be after this change. And maybe even speaking to other people who've successfully managed that, I think, can give us the courage we need.
Definitely. You'll do well.
Well, this is wonderful to hear something. I'll be certainly happy to help you through your change. Okay?
Anytime. I'll call you.
Keep my resistance to myself.
Which is a point that we're all going through change, and that's what makes us human. That's the guaranteed fact, as you open the show with, that we never get taught in high school how to be a parent, how to go through change, how to balance a checkbook, all those important things. And this is the crucible we're in. We're all in it together. And the skills that we can help each other remember and practice together gives us the strength to move on.
One of the things that I'm doing right now is I've been facilitating a ongoing group using the book The Artist Way by Julia Cameron. I don't know if you're familiar with this book, but it's a 12-week program. Each chapter is a different look at the resistance we have to our own creativity, and sort of looking at resistance to change, resistance to accepting our creativity and accepting our ability to change. And as she goes through, some of that resistance is early training. Some of that are voices in our heads of people who told us we couldn't do something. Sometimes it's a fear of looking foolish. And sometimes it's just that belief that it isn't possible for me, but it's possible for you. So in terms of working with people, I mean, how do you move them out of that stuck place where they...
First of all, I don't try. Sometimes, you know what I'll say to people? Because the implication there, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I might be totally wrong, is that you got to move past this place. Because otherwise, you're going to be stuck forever. And people believe that. People who are using that addictive pattern or whatever, part of them are hating themselves while they're doing it. So what I'll say to them, hey, maybe it's not time. It's okay to be where you are. Everything has a perfect timing. A rose opens at its rate, a chrysanthemum at another, and who's to say one's better than the other? And so I'll start at that point with people. Where are you right now? Is it comfortable for you? Okay. When it's not, come see me.
Okay.
I can't make people move through that change when they're not ready. And I choose to see people as an unfolding process forever. So I don't make that. And then when they're in the change process and they say, hey, I don't like what I'm doing, I'll co-create with them. I'll look at it like, let's play detective together. Let's trace this back. Let's look at the pattern here. What is it you don't like? Okay, we'll do it. Let's talk about it next week and think about what happened before the actual pattern. What were you thinking? What were you feeling? Even call me. Let's get to the roots of it and play detective. And suddenly, like, I work with kids a lot on this too, because everybody goes through change. And suddenly it's a game. And looking at this from that perspective takes some of the, and there's humor in it too, takes some of the charge, the intensity out of it.
Well, and I like this idea of the word co-create, or the idea of doing this in partnership.
Me too.
That we can figure this out together.
Yeah.
Because what that means is, because I know one of the fears that people will have when they're trying to move past change or move into change is sort of like everybody else has this secret that I don't know yet? It's like everybody else seems to know what they're doing. Everybody else can seem to manage change. Everybody else doesn't have a problem with this. What's wrong with me that I'm feeling afraid?
And what I would say to you is, forget that. How did you make it through the last big change? What worked?
Yeah.
What didn't? Fantastic. You know what doesn't work for you. That's great. That's as important as knowing what does work. Everybody has a punchline to those questions. Maybe it was the hot shower. Well, now suddenly managing change is familiar. I know hot showers. I can take a hot shower. I can read People magazine. I've done that before. And now I'm managing it's very empowering. I'm managing change in a way that I know works. You have wisdom, I have wisdom, and we can compare ideas. But I don't have all the answers. You have a whole lot of them. Let's problem solve together. It's an inspiring experience that way.
Oh, and
Very creative.
I was going to say, and it sounds like it's much a creative process for you also. Now, the final area that they talked about here was commitment, which is where we've gone through this process and we make a decision and we say, okay, this looks like the next step I want to commit to do.
Yeah, and you know what? I would take an arrow and go from commitment to life event and make this a circle, because it goes round and round and round. Every time we break a glass or stub our toe or have a big accident, commitment ultimately, and it's not down here, a lot of these words imply others, teamwork, cooperation. I would say commitment to being my own best friend. That's number one.
Okay.
I make a commitment to take care of myself in a new way. Because life is not, pain is going to come, change is going to come, guarantee. Amnesia is going to come. How can I take care of myself in a way that doesn't harm myself or others? That's my commitment. And then, can I cooperate with others as part of that commitment? It falls into place to me, starting with that.
Well, and part of that has to do, I know in Julia Cameron's book, she talks about having people in our lives who can be supportive people to our change. People that aren't threatened by it, but can be cheerleaders almost in a way and say, that's fabulous.
And if you don't have that, because a lot of the inner voice, that wants to say, for those people who think these thoughts, you don't have friends like that. They can't handle it. You don't want to let them know. It's okay. Sometimes there's periods where we don't have that support. That's okay. Now you know what you need to get. And through trial and error, I like to play scientist with life too. Life as an experiment. And through trial and error, you're going to find out who's available and who's not. And you're going to know how you're going to know is you're going to feel good with them. You're going to feel safe with them. And you give it a trial run and see where it goes.
So again, as we close, it reminds us that we have a lot of ability within us to be successful in this process. Okay, I want to thank you for being with me tonight, Selma. I want to thank you for joining us. In the next few weeks, we'll address everyday ethics and sexually exploited therapists. I'm Mary Crocker Cook. Good night.